Let's get started. I will first of all mute everybody first, and then if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and interrupt me. Okay, I'm also starting a share screen so that you can see what I'm showing. So just hang on a little bit. Okay, I hope you can all see my screen, which talk about the 20th session of the National Congress, which was held in October 2022. We are trying to look at what are the messages that we can get from such a important meeting from China. Oh, why my keyboard doesn't work? Hey, come on. Next line. Okay. Go down a little bit so that I can control it. Slideshow. Yep. Okay, so this is the 20th Communist Party of China's Congress. A little bit of background. The preparation for the meeting actually started almost 1 year beforehand. It started in about November 2021. And during that preparation, obviously one important thing is determine who is eligible to attend, and then prepare all the party documents and the discussions, etc., etc. We have to remember that the Communist Party of China is the world's second largest political party. The largest one is the BJP in India. China's Communist Party has 96.7 million members by 2022 December 25th. Obviously, it is not possible for 96 million people to attend the Congress at the same time. So we will talk about the Chinese political system a little bit to give you an idea how that's 2,296 members were elected to represent the CPC. Another note I would like to suggest to everybody when you are trying to look up information about China. If the information mentions the Communist Party as CCP, China's Communist Party, then you are very sure that it is from a Western media. When it mentioned as CPC, which is the proper name, Communist Party of China, then the information comes from official Chinese sources. So that will give you a very contrasting views on the material. CCP materials are usually against China, talking about all the worst things, bad things, etc. about China, whereas CPC materials usually will look at it in a much more objective way with much less emotional content. It's just stating the facts. And I know that everybody will be able to assess CCP informations. So what I'm trying to prepare for you is actually more CPC informations. I will rather give you another alternate view, which might be very different from the views we usually get from our media. With that said, then I'll talk about a little bit about the Chinese political system. In the West here, we usually call it an authoritarian system, but the Chinese people doesn't look at it that way. It is a system very much with Chinese characteristics. First of all, CPC is the only ruling party in China. There is no other ruling parties. That doesn't mean that there is no other political parties. The other political parties will cooperate with CPC and in a cooperative role rather than a competitive role. That means we don't see the kind of party adversary between our parties. In China, the parties work together for the common good of the Chinese people. Or at least that is the hope. And there are about another 10 different political parties in China, including parties represented the Kuomintang, which is the ruling government in Taiwan at the moment. Because there is no competing parties, so the ruling party becomes the only party. That means it can implement long-term plans. Long-term plans meaning plans which will be implemented in 5 years, which is called 5-year plans. And they also implement much longer version of plans. For example, the Made in China 2025 was announced in 2015. That means it will take 10 years to implement the plan. And for example, another crucial implementation which has been successfully executed is the 100th anniversary of the CPC. And the goal of that is by the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China, the Chinese will achieve a moderate poverty status. One of the measurement of that is the elimination of extreme poverty. So they can implement plans like that. The second centennial plan will be the celebration of the formation of People's Republic of China. People's Republic of China, or PRC, is formed in 1949. That means they are now working towards the celebration at 2049, in which the goal is to change China from a moderate populous country into a rejuvenated modern China. So that is their goal. We will talk about that in the third meeting this term. Because the only political party is a Communist Party, so they have to assume responsibilities of everything they do. If it is good, they are to be celebrated. If it is bad, they are to be blamed. So the responsibility lies squarely on the shoulder of the Chinese Communist Party. You cannot say, oh, it's another party's fault. There's no such thing, because you are the only ruling party. So you will take both the good and the bad as a whole package. Of course, there's a Western idea is where do the party get its legality or legitimacy to rule. Well, we look at our long human history. The authority to rule is usually acquired violently, both in China, in the rest of the world, including Europe. Remember, after the Roman Empire, the Europe get into these so-called Dark Ages. During that Dark Age, different kings ruled by iron fists, basically through violence, and they constantly change border because they are competing against each other, and that competition is by fighting. Same as in China, a dynasty starts by a strong man overthrowing the last dynasty, and then because he had united China, then he got to rule China. I would say this is the same for the current ruling party of China. The Kuomintang, or at that time we call ROC, Republic of China, but led by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, overthrew our last dynasty, the Qing dynasty, in 1911. After that, China decayed into civil fightings between warlords. The KMT, the Kuomintang, isn't able to fully control the whole country. And then we have the Sino-Japanese War, which is 3 years earlier than the Second World War. And during that time, being the ruling government, Kuomintang or ROC, exhausted all its resources. So by the end of the Second World War, or by the end of the Sino-Japanese War, China is poor, broken, devastated, and the country is filled with corruption. After that many years of war, you concentrate on military, your governance obviously decay, and everything so bad. Communist Party of China take the opportunity and then quickly overran KTM armies. One of the main reasons KTM armies is not able to hold up is we have the idea that Chinese doesn't fight Chinese. We have already go through 8 years of war with Japanese. The soldiers are exhausted. The soldier doesn't have any morale to continue fighting fellow Chinese citizens. So Kuomintang retracted to Taiwan and established the current ruling party in Taiwan, which is the Republic of China. And of course, Mao Zedong took the opportunity and took the mainland China and formed the People's Republic of China. So that is history. There's no if about the history. Histories go like that. We don't know if after overthrowing the Qing dynasty, KMT able to firmly control China. Will there be a People's Republic of China? We don't know because history doesn't have if. But this is what we are facing today. So we have to look at what we are facing today and look forward to what this current ruling party, the Communist Party of China, is able to do for the Chinese people. We judge it by Chinese standard. We shouldn't judge it by Western values, because Chinese are Chinese. Chinese has 5,000 years of continuous civilization. We have our value system, so we should judge it by that way. And we also know that the current Western democratic system only started about 300 years ago with the French Revolution. Before that, everybody is still ruled by kings or emperor or local violence powers. That is the fact. So, forcing our values onto China, I think is not appropriate. So we have to look at it from the Chinese standpoint. The Chinese call it a decentralized democracy. What does it mean? There is a diagram on the right hand side. We see that on the bottom there's lots of people, and then it will vote for people to lead that group, and then this second at the next upper level will vote for the next upper level, and so it goes. That means at the lowest level of government, maybe a CPC branch in a factory, in a company, or in a village, or in a county, then local people vote representative to represent them at that low level. Now that is grassroots voting. Yes, it is. Anybody is able to vote as long as you belong to that community. So maybe I am living in a village. The village want to vote for a village secretary. Then I can participate. But at the same time, if I'm working for example, a large company, almost in all companies in China, there will be CPC branch. For example, if I'm working for Huawei, one of the telecom company, then within the telecom company, there will be a CPC branch, and I can vote in that if I'm an employee at Huawei. And then that CPC branch will work with the management of Huawei in order to benefit the working conditions of the workers. So they are equivalent to work unions, and the work unions is organized through CPC constitutions. So that is the lowest level. At this lowest level, everybody can vote, and the entry barrier or entry threshold is pretty low. Depending on the size of that local community, usually you get 5 or 10 people nominating, then you can stand as a candidate. So the entry level to becomes a deputies. This is the standard term used in China to become deputies in a branch. The entry level is very low, just 5 people nominating you or 10 people nominating you, depending on the size of the organization. So you work on that level for 5 years. This kind of election only held every 5 years. So if you miss the election, you can still work for the party, but not as a official of the party or a deputy of the party. And then by gaining experience, by knowing people, then when the time comes, then you will be nominated, and then you got a chance to get into the deputies ranking of CPC. The next level up, for example, I have been working in a county for 5 years. If I have been doing my job very well, everybody supported me, and I have been working with my fellow counties branches, everybody know me, and then I may be willing to go to the next level. So I say, let me try going up one level. Instead of just county, I will go up to a province level. Then I will get nominated by my fellow deputies of my same level. That means all the county levels can nominate. Again, the nomination criteria is very low. But after I got nominated, my nomination had to be approved by the next level up, because I'm trying to go to the province level. So the province deputies will try to ensure that yes, this is some people which we will be able to work with. So you have to get the endorsement. After you get the endorsement, of course, the people who votes for you comes from all your colleagues at the same level, the county levels from different counties, all under the same province. In a province, you may have 10 different counties, and then the 10 different counties representative or deputies will be voting for me to go to the province level. Then, if I get elected, I will be working for the county level, province level for another 5 years before I get the chance to promote up another level. So there's approximately 5 levels before you can reach the National Congress level. So the next level up is formed by the lower branches. Elected office bearers from the lower branches form the constituent of the next level up. So it's not common people now. It's people you have worked for 5 years who will be voting for you. That means all the candidates and the voters know each other personally through working relationships, through friendships, and through all kinds of relationship during that 5 years of work. In case a position is vacant, there is no election because it doesn't need it. Usually when there are elections, you have more candidates than positions. So every candidate got a number. You have 10 votes, he had 11 votes, another one got 20 votes, etc. The highest votes that is equal to the number of positions is called gets elected. But there is still a list of candidates who just wasn't has sufficient votes to become the official. Then they becomes the so-called backup. I call it backup because in case any one of those in position have to leave either through health, age, or whatever reason, then when the position becomes vacant, the next one who got the largest votes get to the position. So they ran up like this. And during that time, you also will be working with the other officials to advance the objectives of the party or at your level. So I'm listing some of the merits here. First of all the candidates and voters know each other as peers and as working colleagues, and they got to be endorsed by upper level. That is a way to guard against any bad apples from entering into the system, because we assume the one at the higher levels have more experience, and in fact they have, because they have. If you're at second level, you have been working for 5 years, and then trying to go to the second level for the another 5 years. The people up above you have already worked 10 years, at least. Okay, so the higher level you go, the more experience you already have. So that is a way of guarding against bad apples. And that also maintain the responsibility chain. After all, the lower level branches are working according to the objectives set by the next upper level, and the next upper level also work with according to the objectives set by the next upper level. And so if you look at it from the other way around, so at the top level, at the national level, the policy they made is able to be pushed down to the province level. And the province will interpret that policy and then work out what is the goal for that particular province in order to achieve the assigned objectives. They develop that goals and then push that goal down to the next level down, to the county, for example. And the county will look at what is being pushed down and look at what is advantages, disadvantages, etc. The SWOT, SWOT, opportunity and threat, and then implement their own goals and then push it down to the village level, maybe. So there is a responsibility chain from top to bottom. And because you want to maintain that responsibility chain, so the lower levels have to be endorsed by the upper level. And all those who haven't got into being the elected official becomes the pool of reserve, which is always working together, standing by. They will attend meetings. The only difference is they don't have voting rights. They attend all the party's meetings, do all the work, and hopefully through that gain the approval and the appreciation of its peers. So the next time, even you haven't been a deputy in that level, you are still able to be nominated to go to the next level up. And because this advancement is only taking place every 5 years, so when you reach the top, you will have at least 20 to 25 years of experience working with every level of the government, from the lowest grassroots level up to the national level. Now, each level government is run by a committee, so it is not authoritarian. It is a committee-based. Even at the national level, we always say, Xi Jinping has all the power. Yes or no? Yes, he is the representative of China as the president of China. And he is also chairman of a number of very important committees. But the committees will make the decision, and then as the leader of the Communist Party of China, he had to execute. So the CPC is not only a political party, it is also an execution party. It is a party which will execute the policy, supported by a government bureaucracy. So this is quite similar to our system as well. Our politicians make policy, and then a policy gets executed by our government bureaucracy. But the line between policy making and bureaucracy execution of policy is blurred, much more intertwined in China. A lot of time, for example, the village secretary will be visiting every household and convince them to follow a particular government policy. For example, during the eradication of poverty, the village is located in such a poor ecological situation. There's no way to get them up to the minimum levels which we consider as not extreme poverty. So one of the strategies is to move the whole village out from that ecological dark hole into somewhere which will have economic opportunities. Then, when you want to move the whole village, you need to convince every member of the village to say, yes, we are not going to leave you behind here. We are going to move you out into a better life. You can't force them, so you have to convince them. How do you convince them? That lies into the shoulder of those village secretary. So in a way, this village secretary is performing the task assigned from the last level up. So these elected deputies or officials is both the bureaucratic system of the government, and at the same time, because they are working with the local people, they becomes the ears and eyes of the government. When there is a complaint, the local people will talk to this village secretary at the first time when the problem come up, and therefore either he can solve the problem, or if he can't, he had to pass the problem up to the next level and see whether there are solutions to the problem. And therefore this grassroots CPC members becomes a very good data collecting device, collecting all the information from all over China and then progressively pass it onward. Only those problems which cannot be solved at a certain level will be passed up to the next level up. And that next level have more resources, obviously, will be trying to find a solution. If it can't, it will pass up again until the problem is solved. And that explains why within China, the federal government got about 98% support from Chinese people. That is a level of support we cannot dream of in our Western countries, in our democracy. There's no way. We can never achieve that kind of support by the people, because the Chinese political system really can solve individual problems. Obviously, there are other problems which can't be solved. For example, the eradication of poverty. It takes the CPC 100 years to solve, but there is an achievement never been done in our human history. So even Xi Jinping, the current president, arguably the most powerful man in the world, or the second most powerful man in the world, started as a village secretary at a very poor village. He started from the bottom up. The first achievement Xi Jinping made is to solve the problem of the excretion from all the animals in the village. He advocated using a biodigester and then installing biodigester in a village, and then use the methane gas produced by the biodigester to light up the village as well as cooking fuel. That makes him successful and supported him to move up, and then eventually, before he get into the national level, National Congress, he is ruling over 30 million people, managing an economy about the size of Australia, plus I think another country of our similar scale. And then he went into the political in the national parties. So what's the role of this National Congress? This National Congress only meets every 5 years. So there are issues with meeting that is not that often. Okay? First of all, how do you do it on a daily basis? So they have standing committees. And so one of the things they have to do is elect members to the standing committees. The standing committees has about 200 people. 200 people as standing committees. And the standing committees meet approximately once a year. So even that standing committee will require delegation of power. But it doesn't mean that the other members of the National Congress have nothing to do in the time in between meetings. They are the execution members of the world of China's government. They keep on working with local governments, with provincial governments, etc., in all kinds of different subcommittees. And therefore, when they actually meet in these every 5 years, you will see, they look like rubber stamp. They approve things so quickly. Of course, because every document that is passed to them has already been worked through in years beforehand. So it is just a matter of officially passing through the minutes. So one of the things is, of course, receive and approve the government work of the last 5 years. And other things include other national constitutional matters. Now, the government reports in full is available online, so you just need to search for it. And of course, you can search for the English version. The Chinese version is about 60-something pages long, so I'm not able to read the whole report to you. So I will summarize some of the report's details and also look at some of the comments from different political commentators around the world. So let's do that. So there is an institute called MacArthur Institute of China Studies. So again, the link is here, and then of course you can also search for this name, and then you'll find the report. I find it by Google search anyway. The report shows the continuity of the CCP policy. Again, you'll notice they don't use the public name CPC. They use the name CCP. So you will know their basic background. Continuity of the policy direction and priorities. But the Congress' most fundamental political change cannot be found on paper. What's that? Instead of stepping down and after 2 terms, the General Secretary, that is Xi Jinping, will set himself up for the 3rd term. And actually, that's true, yes. Xi Jinping now is serving his 3rd term as General Secretary. And being General Secretary also means being the President of China. Xi formulated a very grand, ambitious plan for China. He's now locked them firmly in place and paved the way for his mission to make them a reality. Another way to look at the report is look at some of the key terms. One of the key terms, national security. In the 2022 report, it appears 27 times in Xi Jinping's report. But looking at the history, you see that in 2012, the then Secretary of CPC, Wu Jintao, only used the term 4 times. By 2017, again under Xi, used it 80 times. Now it is used 27 times. So we need to understand why CPC put so much concentration or focus on national security. Then we have to look at the current international environment. I would say the inflection point is 2010, when China surpassed Japan to become the world's 2nd largest economy. How do the Chinese leadership understand this? Well, they understand it through Obama's pivot to Asia. What that pivot to Asia entails? Well, basically, it means United States is going to move 2/3 of its naval power into the Pacific Ocean. Then the leadership in China would look at that and think, which country around Pacific area will need a U.S. 2/3 naval power. After looking, the conclusion is it's China. China is the reason why Obama have this pivot to Asia. And then why? They realized that, we just becomes the world's second largest economy. We are a potential challenger to the American supremacy. And therefore, we becomes Americans' enemy. And therefore, we have to look at our national security. We don't want to go back to 200 years ago, 300 years ago, when the Western powers can come to our shore and carve up our people, our land, and our resources at their will. We want to protect ourselves. A fair policy. And therefore, as the international systems becomes deteriorated, then these national security issues increases. The whole idea is the United States want to delay the growth of Chinese economy because China has about 4.2 times the population of United States. If China's per capita GDP is equivalent to United States, then the China's GDP will be 4 times that of United States. Then United States will not have the same influence around the world which it enjoys today. Obviously, because of the tremendous size of Chinese GDP and therefore economic influence around the world. Now, at the moment, China's GDP in nominal terms is about 86% of United States. It passes the 90% red line of the United States. In the past, we had seen similar things happening. One of the reasons why Russia cannot join Europe to become a European country is because it is against American policy. Or you may call me conspiracy theory, but let me explain my argument and then you judge by yourself. If Russia, after the collapse of Soviet Union, is accepted into the European countries as a European countries, into EU, then with huge resources from Russia, oil, natural gas, all kinds of materials, plus the industrial power of Germany, then it is very easy for EU as a bloc grow the economy much larger than America. Then the American stronghold on Europe will be weakened. Another example is Japan. When Japan becomes the second largest economy, America implemented the so-called Plaza Accord, which gave Japan the last 30 years of zero economic growth. China understands history. Chinese leadership read history. They know what they say mean. So they have to devise methods to avoid being similar fate with EU or Japan or worse, like 200 or 300 years ago. Yes, 2022, the actual China's GDP growth is only 3%, the lowest in the last 40 years. The prediction was 6% at the beginning of the year. But you look at the trade, Chinese trade actually hit an all-time high in 2022, reaching 46 trillion yuan or 6.3 trillion US dollars. It becomes the largest trading country in the world, up 7.7% from 2021. That means Chinese economy is still growing, although in nominal terms it is only 3%, but in terms of trade it is actually up 7.7% evaluated using US dollars. Using the yuan renminbi. But if you're using US dollars, it's up 7%. Export up 7%, and imports only up 1.1%, and produce another record trade surplus, 877 million US dollars, surpassing 2021's 676 million. Now, when we look at a country, there are two ways to look at its economy. One way is, of course, look at how the citizenship actually live every day. That's one way. That's the domestic economy. Another way is look at the international economy. How much foreign reserve that country has gathered. With trade surplus for the last 40 years, China accumulated a huge trade surplus. That trade surplus represents money owned to China by countries around the world. And American has been having trade deficit for the last 30 years. So if you would ask me which country is richer, I would say China, because around the world, people own China a great deal of money. But around the world, Americans own the world a lot of money. At the same time, after Trump's trade war with China, we also have this technological war. We all hear about US semiconductor restrictions, limiting China to the access of the latest technology in semiconductors. Semiconductors is now one of the key components of almost everything. Of course, from computers, even to our refrigerators, to our microwave, of course, cell phones included, everything. Cars, microcomputers is everywhere. Our credit card is based on microcomputers now. We have the near field contacts, NFC. We touch on the pad and then the transaction gets passed through. That is through electronics. Everything is semiconductors. But by limiting Chinese access to semiconductor technology, that will limit China's economic growth. To Chinese, it is not acceptable. So the only way to do it is, okay, if you don't let me join you, then I will invent it myself. Just like the GPS system, just like the International Space Station. China wanted to join the International Space Station, but the American passed through a law and say, no, NASA cannot cooperate with Chinese space agencies. So what can China do? Okay, build it myself, build it ourselves. So now we have the Tiangong Chinese space station in orbit, which is completed in 2022. And it becomes operational now. So in the space station here up there, Chinese are now conducting experiments. By stifling China's chip industry, the restriction go far beyond merely packing China a few steps behind and aim to choke the progress altogether. They also push Beijing to double down on self-reliance, as semiconductors are essential for developing the next generation opportunities, AI and other digital technology, which is crucial to China's long-term ambition. So in order to solve that problem, they, again here is use CCP, that means I'm quoting, okay, will use its all-state effort to achieve self-reliance. The implication here is that once China achieves its self-reliance, then the current supplier of semiconductors will be in big trouble. Imagine I'm a manufacturer in China. My products need semiconductors. For example, I'm making a refrigerator. I need some semiconductors to control the cooling, etc. of my refrigerator. At the moment, we have free trade, so I can get the best from around the world, including from America, Japan, Korea, etc., etc. But now, America is giving a restriction on, for example, Huawei. Then I would think, hey, when my product becomes worldwide known and becomes a major market leader, my access to these semiconductors may be blocked by American, just like Huawei is being blocked by America because its 5G technology is more advanced than the West. In order to protect myself, I will source my semiconductors from China because China is not going to block my access to my Chinese semiconductor. That means my willingness to buy foreign semiconductors has dropped tremendously. So once the Chinese are able to manufacture the semiconductor I wanted, I will move over immediately. Imagine the semiconductor companies around the world. When Chinese use about 45% of the world production of semiconductor at the moment, it is one of the largest import items, bigger than the Chinese import of energy. When that revenue, which China will flow out through import to the rest of the world, is now converted into domestic activities, that means the world will get at least $200 million less from China flowing out. Semiconductor industry is a capital-intensive, research-intensive industry. The average investment of R&D in this industry is about 23 to 25%. When your revenue drop, you inevitably have to cut down on research investment. And when that revenue stream is redirected to the Chinese semiconductor industries, they got a boost in their revenue, and hence they got a boost in their research efforts. That means once that happens, In China, there is a positive feedback loop to get bigger and bigger and more sophisticated. But in the rest of the world, you get into a negative feedback loop. You get less revenue, and hence you have to cut on research, and hence your product is drifting away from the cutting edge. I don't want that to happen, but it seems that the American is forcing China to adopt this approach. Of course, the major issue from New York Times is Xi Jinping got his third time. And again, as I said before, the term national security becomes very important. And CSIS reported the Chinese Communist Party is doubling down on facing the external threats. Of course, as I have explained, ODI and other organizations said China's cyber reckoning. So it is saying that China is threatening everybody. But I have explained to you, from Chinese point of view, China is trying to protect itself. In a hostile external environment, China is subtly reshaping its approach to developing and global governance. If the external environment doesn't suit me, then China will change. And again, China is trying to consolidate its economic policy. CNA. China faces drastic changes in international landscape, especially external attempts to blackmail, contain, blockade, and exert maximum pressure on China, quoting from Trump. The global economic recovery is sluggish. Regional conflicts and disturbances are frequent, and global issues are becoming more acute, especially after Russia and Ukraine war. External attempts to suppress and contain China may escalate at any time, and China must therefore be more mindful of potential dangers, be prepared to deal with worst-case scenarios. China will have to crack down hard on infiltration, sabotage, subversion, and separatist activities by hostile forces. When you want to limit China, you don't only add in one dimension. You will add in all dimensions in order to contain China, including all the military bases around China, including economic sanctions, including technological sanctions, including spies and other means. China still maintains it wants to have a peaceful development. That is a formula provided by Deng Xiaoping in 1980s. China has been steadfastly following the same principle. In the last 40 years, China haven't fight anybody. It haven't sent any bullets to anyone. Yes, there are skirmishes between the India and China border, but these people fight with hands. There's no gunshots anyway. Compare that with the activities by United States. Just this century, 2001, we have the 9/11. Then later that year, American invaded Afghanistan. 2 years later, 2003, America invaded Iraq using a false premise that Iraq have weapons of mass destruction, which has never been found. Then it involved in overthrowing Libya. Libya is now a shithole. China haven't done anything like that in the last 40 years. Nothing. It didn't invade anybody. It has only one military base in Gibraltar, in the Red Sea. That is for peacekeeping purpose. But at the same time, in order to protect China, Chinese investment in its military modernization is becoming more and more necessary. At latest 2020, peace and development was still validated as a keynote of the times by the Communique of the 5th Plenary of the 19th Central Committee. And even in March 2022, during a video conference, Xi Jinping told Joe Biden, the prevailing trend of peace and development is facing serious challenges. China still wants to revitalize Chinese culture through peace. But I hope the world will give peace a chance. The rapid deterioration of the US and the PRC relationship and pushback from key US allies and partners. It took a while for the analysts in Beijing to fully appreciate that the problem was not personalities, but politics. People thought, oh, it was Trump. No, after Trump, Joe Biden followed the same policy. The impact of COVID-19 on PRC economy is also huge. No doubt about that. Zero COVID means lockdown, lockdown, and lockdown. Economic activities obviously has been hammered, and then complicated by the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That trapped Beijing into a long-held principles: respect sovereignty and territorial integrity of national states. At the same time, looking into the future, CPC needs to reinvent itself so that it becomes relevant in order to lead the country. So it is also in a process of re-evaluation and trying to make itself relevant, both in terms of national security and in other measures. Another point is we looked at is, well, China is still holding its modernization promise as before. China, the CPC, has engaged in a self-evaluation and then come to the conclusion that it is due to mental slackness, incompetence, detachment from the rest, from the masses, and corruption, which will lead to the downfall of CPC. And therefore they have to reinvent again themselves in order to meet the new challenges. Okay, these are the comments from the West. So I have to go a little bit faster now, because I love to give everybody a chance to ask questions and discussions. So let's look at some of the more positive things from China Foreign Ministry. Xi Jinping again is elected into the Central Committee, and with him at the core. Now, unlike other countries' constitution, which you say we cannot change, in China, constitution is evolving. And one of the evolution now is to include Xi Jinping's thought on economic development. It is called socialism with Chinese characteristics. Previously, Chinese CPC always talk about Marxism, communism, but now they're talking about socialism with Chinese characteristics. Now that is a distinct difference, moving away from a pure Marxist communist point of view into a socialist point of view with Chinese characteristics. And you want to trace back socialism. Yes, this is a term, a modern term. But in China, 500 years before Jesus Christ, 500 BC, Confucius talked about the ideal paradise for China, and that is socialism. So socialism with Chinese characteristics can be interpreted in a completely Chinese way. But in order to give the world an understanding, the CPC choose to use socialism with Chinese characteristics. So Xi Jinping's thought of this is now included into Chinese constitution. This is very deep-rooted in China. To summarize, it means putting people first, maintaining self-confidence and standing on our feet, upholding fundamental principles and breaking new grounds, adopting a problem-oriented approach, apply system thinking, and maintaining a global vision. You cannot grow without knowing the rest of the world. It also talked about what the Chinese have achieved in the first 10 years. Unleash a new era of socialism with Chinese characteristics, eradicated extreme poverty, and then in terms of economic development, the GDP expanded from 53.9 trillion yuan to 114 trillion yuan. It represented 18.5% of the world economy, up 7.2%. The GDP per capita is now risen to $12,000. In terms of Global Innovation Index, it is now at number 11, move up 23 points in 10 years. The life expectancy is now 78.2 years. United States had lost 2.6 years of life expectancy due to COVID, and now sitting at 76 point something years. China's life expectancy has exceeded United States. China runs the world's largest education system, social security system, medical system, healthcare system, and have made historical transformation to the environment. In 2008, when Beijing hosts its first Olympic, we see that we can produce a blue sky, and we joke that it's called Olympic blue. People realize if we can work together, we can restore our economy, environment, ecology. And now, Beijing enjoys blue sky almost 300 days per year. China is the major partner for more than 140 countries, including Australia here. Yet, in the last 10 years, it has contributed 38.6% of the global economic growth. And IMF predicted in 2023, China will produce about half of the global economic growth. It also established the second centenary goal. That means at the celebration of the formation of PRC in year 2049, it will move China to a modern socialist country in all aspects, and to advance the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, because the last 200 or 300 years is the era of what of pain. It takes a two-step. The first step will be realized in 2035 and then continue onwards. You continue to commit to the Chinese current path on modernization. Okay, finally, it elected the 20th Central Committee, which consists of 205 full members and 171 alternate members. That means these 171 people has already received some votes, and they are in line. In case one of these 205 members, for whatever reason, leave the post, they will be standing to come in and vest the power to General Secretary and the members of the political and the standing committee, etc., etc. The Central Committee is tasked with carrying out the decisions of the National Congress, leading the work of the party and representing the party internationally. So Xi Jinping is elected to serve his third term. I think that is the most important thing everybody has been concentrating on. Okay, so I now stop the share, and then anybody would like to ask any questions, just unmute yourself and then we can have a discussion. Anyone? Yes, please.
When I think one of the problems is with that form of government is that sometimes the local villagers are complaining and the local mayor or elected person doesn't want to pass it up.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want them to know, because maybe he's corrupt, maybe he's turned some land that should have been left into a development for himself. So he doesn't want to pass it up. And sometimes you see people in Beijing who've come from the provinces, they want to speak to the head office government.
Yeah. That's like anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But China is trying to minimize that kind of so-called unsatisfactory. So the way to do it is actually, now, as I said, this every level of government is managed by a committee. The committee will consist, of course, at that level of the branches. But there will be also some delegates or members from upper levels. And these upper level members can be transferred without notice to the committee. So what Xi Jinping can do is, if he recognize somewhere there's a problem, he can just put another high-ranking party members onto that subcommittee, that committee, and then work through the committee and make changes. China also has an independent committee on discipline, the discipline committee. The discipline committee is looking at corruption very seriously, because they now recognize corruption may be one of the factors which may lead to the downfall of CPC, which they don't want. Anyone else?
Yes. One of the criticisms of China is their human rights things against the Uyghur people. That certainly wouldn't be in the Confucius way, I wouldn't have thought. Now, why doesn't China allow Westerners to go and inspect that area to see whether that is happening?
China do allow people to look at. Remember the last representative from the UN Human Rights Commission the High Commissioner actually went to Xinjiang and have a look herself. At around 15 minutes to her retirement, the UN Human Rights Commission put up a report. Why delay to the last 15 minutes? That means the report come out at New York time midnight 11:45, almost midnight. She will retire in the next 15 minutes. Then the report come out, because it is not the report she writes. Somebody else force it onto her.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the so-called stakeholders, we are talking about Uyghurs, Muslim groups. Isn't the Muslim countries commission, the commission of all Muslim countries, more interested in their Muslim Uyghurs? So they have sent representatives to Xinjiang and talk to the local people and get report back. And they consistently say what the Chinese have been doing there is totally acceptable. The problem here is we only listen to propaganda from the West. If a lot of the so-called experts, for example, there is a Adrian Sins, who is a German, who is a German. Okay, he writes a lot about what happened in Xinjiang, but unfortunately, he has never visited Xinjiang. And there are examples quoting say, people coming from Xinjiang complaining. You trace that, they all go to one woman, the same woman over and over and over again. Of course, there are separatists who is outside of China, wanting to so-called advance the downfall of China. But if you look at Xinjiang's own development, Xinjiang produce about 80% of the world's tomato. They produce the best cotton. Of course, now United States has a complete ban on all products Xinjiang. So Xinjiang produces about 60% of all the silicon for solar panels. Xinjiang's people life expectancy have been improving. Xinjiang's Uyghurs population have been increasing, whereas the Han people, the ethnic Han people's population has been under the one-child policy. There isn't any one-child policy for Xinjiang. So, and again, you look at a Chinese notes and money. Look at Chinese money. On the Chinese money, there's 5 different languages there, including the Uyghurs language there. Which country in the world has a ethnic language on their national currency? None, except China. So all this accusation is totally fabricated. Now, logically, we cannot disprove a negative. We cannot prove a negative. I tell you, I haven't drank Coca-Cola this morning. Okay? How can I prove it? I can't. There's no way to prove a negative. Just like proving Iraq doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. How can they prove I don't have weapon of mass destruction? Yes, you send weapon inspector in, search everything, still there's not 100% proof. No, you can't prove negative. So China cannot prove it has been committing genocide. But the statistics, the Uyghurs population is increasing. The Uyghur people still speak Uyghurs at home and in public. The Uyghurs people's lifestyle, Uyghurs people's life quality improves. That is visible. But you would say, oh, China's have massive imprisonment of Uyghurs, Uyghurs. The Chinese say, oh, this is re-education camp. But say, no, this is forced re-education. But if you go inside, look at what they do, teach skills to the Uyghurs so that they can make a living. They teach them Mandarin so that they can go outside their community and go to the other part of China in order to do business. When you teach them Mandarin, say, oh, you are a cultural genocide. Well, once they leave that classroom, they speak Uyghurs again. So, and at home they do it. And now Xinjiang is one of the tourist attraction because the food is just wonderful there. I love to go there. I have been joking with my family. If I'm going to give up Australian home here and buy a home in China, where would I buy it? I would say I buy one in Xinjiang for two reasons. First, the food there is the best of the world. The second reason, the Uyghurs girls are very beautiful. Although I may not touch them, but I can enjoy them by eyes. That is good enough for me. And the third reason, the real estate is still very affordable. Okay, any other question? Yes, please. Unmute yourself first.
Yep.
Okay.
Just a quick one, Albert. When will this be on YouTube, this presentation?
I'm now live already, so it's on.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Okay.
already. You want to look at it, you search my name, Albert Yip, English channel.
English channel. Okay. And the second question, in the Congress outcome, I noticed that Xi Jinping was rededicating the unification of Taiwan as an objective over the next. I think he's mentioned. I don't think he mentioned a period of time. Do you see the reunification of Taiwan as part of China as a possible immediate thing in the very near future?
No. Well, my evaluation is that the reunification will happen before 2049. So that it will be the deadline when China proclaim it have revitalized a modern China. Okay, but time is on Chinese side. It doesn't need to reunify with Taiwan in a hurry. Waiting and waiting. The Chinese believe that is influence and is economic ability, and everything else will be improving in time. So the longer it waits, the more incentive for the citizens in Taiwan to reunify. Rather than a forceful reunification, which if it is a war, there will be bloodshed. And after that, ruling Taiwan will not be that easy with that blood in the process. The best way is a peaceful reunification through negotiations. Another way I would say is what we call cutting the head off. That means maybe assassination of the government leaders and then cause a coup of the Taiwan army. That might be another way. but that way is still a bit too violent. Yeah, I'm still prefer it to go really a negotiated reunification. That would be the most preferred way. And China doesn't need to hurry because time is on his side, on China's side. The longer it waits, the better strength it has in the negotiation table. So if Taiwan is smart, they should start negotiation as soon as possible. Because the chips is building up on the Chinese table, and you are losing chips at the time. But anyway, that's my guess.
Okay, thanks for that. And
Thank
I think I'll explore the internet for a look at some of these Uyghur women.
Yep. Good idea.
Hell of a recommendation.
Yeah, and Uyghur women are both dancers and singers. They are really beautiful and lovely.
Okay.
But at our age, we enjoy looking at them.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Any other questions? No? In that case, thank you so much for your attention, and then we will... Yes, please. Unmute yourself first. Yeah.
She hasn't unmuted.
No, you haven't unmuted yet. You have to unmute yourself. Click on your speaker button.
This is what.
No, you still haven't unmute.
Oops, unmute.
Unmute. No, you can't. Okay, now save your question. Next time when we get in, you can ask first, and then because at that time I won't be muting everybody.
Thanks, Albert.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Albert.
Okay, see
Enjoy.
you next time. Bye bye.
Take care.
Thanks, Albert.
Bye.
Albert, I'll be away the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, we will be on YouTube anyway, so no problem. Bye.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Albert. Take care.